So laughter is truly healing. This is why if somebody's down, if somebody's anxious, they tell you, right, go watch a funny TikTok. Go watch YouTube video, right, that makes you laugh. Go put on a movie that's going to make you laugh, even if you think I want to cry.
Welcome to the Love, Health, Prosperity podcast once again. Again, we have a very special guest from the last time. We have Miss Jeanette James, who's going to talk to us a little bit about mental health. We want to be able to touch upon talking about different types of mental health issues that people often have to struggle with when it comes to being able to cope. And when it comes to coping as well, there's a lot of the cliche things and they're very effective, don't get me wrong, but because I have Jeanette here and because she has such an extensive toolbox regarding being able to cope with a lot of these mental health issues, and she has a lot of tricks up her sleeve, I'd like to dive into all that because it's very important. But before we actually dive into that, I wanted to be able to have her talk to us a little bit about her personal life, because now that we've gotten to know her a little better, we're following her on Instagram, and we see that there's so many things that she's doing right now. And this is just a big part of life that I think that a lot of people should be doing, that they don't. They don't engage in things that are just out of their elements. They don't dare to do that because they feel that maybe, I don't know, they're probably thinking that they're being judged by somebody.
Yeah.
They're probably afraid that, I don't know if you have this or that, and try to make up 1,001 excuses not to be able to do one thing.
I agree with you. So a little bit about my personal life, and I shared a little bit last time, so I won't go into detail with those, but just to recap, right now I am doing modeling. I am also Miss West Texas 2023.
Miss West Texas 2023, yes. Congratulations. That's cool.
Yes. So as a matter of fact, tomorrow I have a modeling gig going on at Sunland Park,
So cool.
Modeling with my daughter as well. So it's for mothers and for children. And I think a lot of times, right, speaking to what you said, we always have this question of like, is this age appropriate? Are people going to like make fun of me? Are they going to think that I'm having a quarter life crisis, midlife crisis of some kind? But I will tell you that for me, it's been very healing in itself to be my authentic self. And I think a lot of times people are like, oh, just be yourself, right? Be your true self. What does that even mean? So what I would say, right, to those of you listening out there is to really think about what are things that you like for yourself outside of your kids, outside of your husband, outside of your wife. And if you don't know what that is, that means that it's an opportunity, right, to actually get out there and just try.
Do some soul search.
Try something new. Yes, absolutely, right? And sometimes we do have to start external rather than internal to then get to the internal part. So my newest adventure was that I actually auditioned 3 weeks ago for a brand new dance film that's being filmed here in El Paso, and it's called Tierra, Tierra. And it's the story of a young girl who is actually from El Paso. She moved to Austin right now, but is back here to film here. And basically, her whole life story surrounds dance as a part of her healing. So she recognized that when she left, right, she was very much detached from her roots, not her family, not the people that she cared for here, the actual environment, right, what El Paso evokes inside of her, that groundedness of the ground itself, the environment. So I was like, wow, like I'm not a professional dancer, but I definitely have, interest in dancing. And so I ventured out. I ventured out into this audition, which, believe it or not, right, was actually open from dancers of age 21 all the way to 60. It's not typical that you see a dance audition all the way up to age 60. So
how'd you find out about the auditions?
You know, I talk about connectedness. And so again, making that networking, right, chain go higher than you even think it could. And so in one of the salsa groups that I used to dance with, somebody actually posted that on our WhatsApp group. So it just kind of like, created the little tickle inside of me to be like, why not?
Planted that little seed in you.
Yes, it's, it's an experience of some kind. And for the first time, I actually went into an audition where somebody wasn't looking for technicality. They were looking for the actual ability to connect.
Okay.
How was it actually, that each dancer is having the vulnerability to be themselves and connect to the soul of another through music, through the experience of dance, right? The movement of what you're expressing internally through your body. And so the audition, right, required for you to actually say yes to starting that very next week and actually rehearsing Tuesdays and Sundays.
They didn't let you think about it then.
No.
Huh? It was just like, you got the part.
You got the part and you're starting Tuesdays. So that's what I'm doing Tuesdays and Sundays, actually.
So cool.
And it's filming from May 19th through May 21st at night. We're filming from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. during that weekend. And it's going to be out in the desert. And again, it's going to be the story of her life.
In the desert, here in El Paso.
Here in the desert in El Paso.
Like Far East Side.
Far East Side, out by Montana Vista. There's actually somebody who owns a house, and their backyard happens to be the desert, right close to the mountains.
Nice. Yeah.
So it's super nice. It's been an amazing experience. Out of all the dancers, all of the other dancers actually do have experience. At least half of them are dance instructors. And, they even have their career in dance. They've graduated from UTIP in dance. And I think the uniqueness of this project is that every single person involved in the project is from El Paso. People making the costumes, people making the jewelry, the music that they created specifically for Tierra is from actual people, musicians from El Paso that created the music brand new. And then every single dancer is also from El Paso.
Awesome. So how does it make you feel when you're involved in this effort, this collaborative effort with a bunch of people here in El Paso?
You know what? First, I would have to use the word creator. It makes me feel like I am a creator and there's a bigger purpose. As a matter of fact, most of the women that are involved in this project, and I say women because the dancers are females, but there's males behind the scene and everything. So we all believe in that connectedness to each other and just allowing ourselves to really express everything that we have inside of us. We've never met each other before.
Yes.
Yet we have so much in common, right? We believe that the movement of the body truly can create genuine healing from the inside out.
And connection.
Yes, connection to each other, right? And connection to what matters to us the most. So one of the biggest things, right, that this piece is creating is that connection to our earth, the connection to what surrounds us, right? And the support that we have just from our ancestors who walked this earth before, who walked our El Paso before. And understanding that we have that divine connection, right, that support from an energetic sources sometimes we don't know. Some people call it ancestors, some people call it angels, some people call it God, right? Everybody has, their very own spiritual beliefs. And so just the fact, right, that we take something that is so meaningful to create not just healing for ourselves, right? Yeah. But this piece, the actual idea is that it's going to travel into all parts of the United States, outside of the United States as well. And it's going to be previewing in museums where there's going to be like a little cave structure. And they're going to be able to look at it like
a display,
right? It's an actual display where you'll go in and you'll see this piece. This film is going to be, I think, about maybe 15 to 20 minutes at most. Yet it takes so much, right, behind the scenes to actually create.
Well, that is so cool. I mean, that's only just one project that you're involved in. I'm sure you have many other things that you're doing. And then sometimes, when I see some of the things that you're doing on social media with the family and things like that, those are also very cool things too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I am a Reiki provider as well, and I enjoy
How
doing
effective
that.
is Reiki, by the way?
So you know what? I have to tell you that it also depends a lot on the receptiveness of whoever is seeking Reiki services.
Does it have anything to do with vibes and things like that, or
So
no?
people talk about vibes, right? Talk about energy. Some people even say it's the power of suggestion, but I will tell you that I've been very blessed that Rio Vista, actually, the Rio Vista Hospital has
the behavioral
actually
hospital.
invited me. And I've done Reiki sessions for their all-military unit.
How do you see that it works out with
It works out
with
excellent.
clients? It does?
Works out excellent. It really does. There's nothing that's a cookie-cutter recipe for healing. I am not saying that Reiki by any means, right, is a substitute for mental health treatment. The thing is that sometimes people are so blocked or they've been told the same thing over and over again that they need an alternative method of healing. Something where they feel comfortable, something where they feel accepted in where they're at in their healing process.
How do you unblock a person?
Well,
Jeanette?
I would say that I'm not the one, right, that unblocks a person, but rather I'm like the vessel that guides them to doing that healing and that unblocking in themselves.
Well, that's a lot. That's
Yes.
the vessel to be able to put yourself in a mindset
Yes.
where you're going to be able to say,
Yes.
okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to trust in this.
Absolutely.
How do you build that rapport?
It's very interesting, but connection can be developed with somebody just like that. And it's not ingenuine, right? Because I have to connect to who you are, not you connecting to who I am. I'm there for your healing. I'm not a guru, right? I'm not this special person that has special powers and is going to create miracles. But it's more of giving you the ability to know that you have the power to actually heal yourself. So
Nice.
in Reiki, right, we do talk about energetic centers or what people know as chakras. And those do have imbalances in our body.
Thank you for talking about that. But I think it's important that we give a little context about all this stuff, because I know Reiki and I know some of the things that I guess are some of the methods that they're using, but I technically don't really understand it. I really don't. And I think that a lot of people that are listening right now would definitely like to get the basic concepts of it for sure.
Absolutely. So I guess we'll start first, right, with understanding that Reiki is a practice where we are creating movement in energy in the body. So this is the assumption, and I'm going to use that word to be respectful to everybody, right? But it's the assumption that everything that in this life exists has energy. And so we are basically energetic beings living a physical experience. And because of that, right, energy is everlasting, which means that I can be here right now, but my energy could be felt indefinitely.
Channels everywhere.
Channels everywhere, right? So in the body, there's more than just the 7 main channels, right, which we know as chakras. So it starts from the bottom up, right? Our root, number 1, so our feet, right, very planted on the ground, what we're receiving, what we're absorbing, what we're also putting out as we're walking. We have our sacral region, right, which would be involving all of the pelvic area, our sexual reproductive organs. We have also our solar plexus, which is our tummy region, right? Our belly. That's where we hold all our emotions. So if you think about it, right, whenever we get sick or we're anxious, we're depressed, we feel our tummy grumbling, or I'm like, oh, I have butterflies in my stomach, we're belching, I may get, bloated, etc. That's because our emotional center is carried right here. Remember, I did talk about last time, right, that our stomach is our second brain. And that is true. That's actually researched.
Yes.
Now, you move up right into your heart space area. So that's one of our other energetic centers.
But I like that you're talking about that. And I don't mean to interrupt you, but that part about the stomach, people just don't understand how important it is to take care of your body and to make sure that you understand what it is that you're putting in your body when you eat. Because so many people are just like in a hurry all the time, right? That, it's easy to get some fast food. Or it's easy to put in foods that just don't contain any nutritional value.
Yes.
But it's very difficult, I would imagine, being a Reiki, a person who performs Reiki, on somebody who's not doing their part also, right? Because they're just not allowing that energy to flow through.
Right.
right?
And that's something that I would caution, right? Somebody that comes in for a Reiki healing, and even when I do a collective group healing, is I let them know, like, you have to actually drink water, right? Hydrate your body. Because you've got to clear your vessel, right? Your body is a vessel that you have to take care of. So a lot of times I speak to their heart chakra, right? Their heart space, their throat, which is the center of your truth. If you don't speak truth, or you feel like, oh, I have so much to say and I don't say it, you're always feeling like there's some kind of block here.
Like there's a knot or something there.
A knot. They experience it also as a dry mouth. They might experience it also in them feeling like they're choking constantly. Even when they're eating, they might choke physically. We talk about, right, their center of their third eye. So having that intuition, right, trusting that gut feeling that's connected. And then, of course, your crown, right, which is where we receive all of the energy of a higher being, as we would call it, right? Again, God, or different beliefs that you have. But above all is understanding that every single human being absorbs energy from another. We continuously are connecting. Even right now, you and I are exchanging energy.
Yes.
Right? Because people would know if you and I were disconnected, or somehow we were going against each other, because they can actually hear it in our voice. They can feel it in our environment without them even being here present. And that's how all of you, right, the audience has the actual ability to connect even to us. Because I may say something, I might do a manner, I may be dressed in a certain way that speaks to you, and it speaks to you to something that is meaningful to you. So connection, right, is super important when we talk about Reiki, and this healing that, again, helps you to really acknowledge where is that area in your body, if not various areas, that are not connecting. When those energy centers are not connected, it actually creates physical ailments, and it can also lead into mental health problems.
Wow.
So that is the reason why, right, when we look at Reiki, we're looking at the imbalances that are happening. Now, in traditional Reiki, we actually use our hands, right, to feel, to emote that energy. And we do something called a body scan, very different than a mental health body scan, where you look at your internals and see, where am I hurting? We run the hand using both hands above the energy.
So the client is laying down at this time?
The client is laying down. They can be sitting down as well. And we would start from the bottom all the way up, sweeping with the hands. We can feel energy either through cold, through hot, or some people actually have the ability as well to see colors whenever they're doing that kind of healing. Or you can use an actual pendulum that is made out of a crystal in order to see if their energy is actually going clockwise. Is it still, right? So the actual pendulum would be just still, it would not move. Or is it going clockwise as well, where we're seeing that maybe there's some kind of imbalance there. So with doing Reiki, they can actually arrive right to the conclusion of, like, what is stuck in that center of me that is causing this ailment in my life. And I love the fact that, now, especially within the military population, they're definitely more open to exploring alternative, methods like Reiki. They do meditation, they do yoga, they do, a lot of different things, even acupuncture, right?
And this all falls in the category of mindfulness?
Yes.
Yes.
So it helps you definitely, right, to be more mindful, because now you have more awareness. That really is, right, what mindfulness is I'm very present in my awareness of who I am, where I am, and what I'm doing in that moment in time. So awesome. That is super, super important, right? And when I did the first healing collectively, it was about 20 men. It was men in the military unit at Rio Vista. And I remember they were like, how do you know all these things? I'm like, I don't know.
How long is one session?
So I genuinely would say at least an hour to really help somebody clear out, give them that dedication. But I don't stop at an hour if somebody still needs more time. Okay.
Will they tell you? Or
I would know.
You would know.
I would know.
So it's kind of like some sort of dance then, right? If you think about it, now that we're talking about dances and the way kind of people communicate energy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and sometimes a person, for example, will say like, "Oh, I'm getting a headache," so then I know, right, that there's probably some kind of block happening again in their intuition center, right, or that divinity, that connection that we have. And I think that one of the things that, is so important to understand is that this does truly relate to mental health, because we're talking about your fight, flight, and freeze response.
Mm-hmm.
So freeze, believe it or not, right, is paired with your autonomic nervous system.
Yes.
So you have your parasympathetic and then you have your sympathetic nervous system. So in the sympathetic nervous system, when we feel calm, when we feel like I'm chill, I'm relaxed, we are actually, right, stepping into, in the fight, flight, or freeze response, into way over, right? We're going all the way to I'm solid frozen, I'm not moving.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm not moving, I'm disconnected from myself, I'm disconnected from my family, I'm disconnected even from God.
Mm-hmm.
My actual blood pressure and my actual heartbeat can actually be depressed. My immune system is also going to be depressed.
That's the freeze part, right?
That's the freeze part, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of the time, you go out to a mental health provider and they might be like, oh, well, you're in fight, flight, or freeze response. What does that even look like in real life, right?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, it's kind of even scary to tell a client that when they don't really know about the parasympathetic nervous system or anything like that, right?
So you have to speak to them, right, in such a manner of understanding, what does this look like in real life?
Mm-hmm.
So when I use Reiki methods, right, that's basically what I'm helping them to unblock is, let's get you out of the fight, flight, or freeze response. So if somebody's fighting, right, they might be arguing verbally.
Mm-hmm.
They might be trying to hold on to something that they know is not good for them, right? It might look like, now I'm going to go be that workaholic and embed myself in something that I really probably should not, because I'm avoiding. So it's a lot of avoidance.
Right? And that comes with the attachment topic. But that's a different story. But this whole thing with the gentleman from the Army coming in and you performing, what kind of results were you getting there?
So you know what? That day that they actually pulled me in, and I always make sure to check in. I have somebody with me as well, and then there's a therapist there present also in case, you know, somebody has a reaction of some kind that, you know, they need one-on-one attention. And every single one of them reported a big significant difference from where they started to where they ended. And of course, I mean, I tell them, like, you know, this isn't the end all. Like, it's not like I have this magic pill that's going to disappear your life, right? But this is to help give you a new perspective in how to deal with your situation, you know, and especially if they're in flight, because in flight, right, that's where we want to create movement. We want to move away from the current pattern of behavior that's hurting them right now to doing something that's probably healthier for them too.
That is so cool.
So it is very cool.
Very, very interesting. And as a licensed professional counselor, supervisor too.
Yes.
How do you pick what's your favorite methodology here as far as healing? 'Cause
I will say, to be very frank, right, I in my practice don't mix both. So if I'm called to the hospital to service as a Reiki master, then I strictly go as a Reiki master. And I do tell people, right, I am a licensed professional counselor. However, in this moment, my hat is as a Reiki practitioner, right? And your provider is whomever the provider is in the room. Outside of that, right, as a mental health professional, I mean, it depends what somebody comes in with. My specialty is definitely trauma. So I've been trained in several methods. I mean, I can use cognitive processing therapy. I can use eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or EMDR.
Yeah.
I can use trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, or prolonged exposure, or even just regular traditional cognitive behavioral therapy.
You know, you're going to have to talk about all those things, right?
Yes.
It's not going to be that easy, Miss Jeanette. Yeah, for sure. We want to talk. EMDR is something phenomenal, I think, right? I can't tell you that... I mean, the experiences that I see with a couple of people talking about it, or even the books that I read.
Yes.
I know Bessel van der Kolk is really huge on EMDR.
Oh, yeah.
I know Andrew Uberman, professor at Stanton University, who has the Uberman Lab podcast, talks a lot about EMDR, and I think it's so valuable. Can you give us a little bit more insights? Because I know in the last session that you and I had, you did talk a little bit about EMDR, but that episode's going to go on Spotify, so people won't see it. But I'd like for people to know the techniques. That way, you know, you can give them a preview as to what EMDR is all about.
Sure. So last time I actually spoke a little bit of EMDR, and then I talked about the vagal tone, which are two separate things, but actually both, right, are very much tools and techniques to work through traumatic experiences. And I want to begin here. I want to help everybody understand that trauma is separate from post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay? And that's super important to understand because post-traumatic stress disorder, right, is an actual diagnosis in the DSM-5. And some people think, that stubbing their toe is traumatic. That's not going to be a diagnosis, but it's very valid. So EMDR, right, can actually help with trauma. It doesn't just have to be related to a disorder, right, an actual diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. So in EMDR, right, it started, believe it or not, with just eye movement desensitization. It was actually only EMD. The R, the reprocessing, came at a later time. So when Francine Shapiro first created, right, EMD, later EMDR, she created it because as she's walking around, right, and she's thinking about this experience that she had, all of a sudden she realized that, I don't feel, as maybe emotionally charged as when I started.
A simple walk in the forest or something like that. She was walking, right?
So it was the dual attention, right, in that moment of bilateral stimulation, right, meaning that both hemispheres of the brain are being engaged. Why eye movement, right? Because it solely started with your eyes moving from left to right. Because again, we have the logical center, right, in our brain versus the emotional center in our brain. So that's the why, right? So a practitioner who was trained in the initial phases, right, of EMDR would be taught that in session, we would sit in what we call passing ships. So you would be on this side and I would be catty corner to you, right? So we're never in front of each other. We're kind of like side to side with our shoulders directly in front. And that was because I had to have the ability of using my fingers, right? Or even a light bar where I would use my fingers to elicit your eye movement from left to right. And to calm a person down, right, we would do no more than 8 passes slowly. And we would first do a calm, safe place technique using EMDR to soothe the client so that they have the ability to self-soothe, especially because we don't know where the brain is going to take you. Right? We don't know. So once they have the ability to self-soothe, and sometimes clients can take months, believe it or not, just learning how to self-soothe because they've never felt safe anywhere. So since then, we can actually transform the word also into creating comfort for them. Because most everybody, right, has felt comfort at some point and maybe not safety. So once they're ready to do that and we've done the prep work to self-soothe, then we can get into the actual desensitization phase. So in desensitization, right, we still are using the fingers, right, or a light bar to create that movement in the eyes in order for them to process traumatic events that they have had. And we use a treatment plan that's very specific to EMDR, where the questions are formulated once again to go from logic to emotion, from logic to emotion, to start even getting the brain accustomed to that form of questioning. Right? And so through the eye movement, we're basically in the early stages of research with EMDR, thinking that even while we're awake, we're eliciting REM sleep in order to recall an event and reprocess the feelings, right? The emotions, the thoughts that got tied into that traumatic experience. So again, we're borrowing from the idea, right, that person's brain, that person themselves has the ability to heal themselves by reprocessing this incident where maybe we filled in a gap. Maybe we created an image that didn't really exist, right? So when we use the eyes, we have them elicit, right, an actual image that we're going to reprocess. And this image can be tied to what they're feeling, what they're hearing, what are they seeing, what are they tasting, what are they smelling. So remember, our brain doesn't know the difference between something happening right now or something that happened in the past. And I think a lot of times people don't understand that, right? Is that your brain doesn't know the difference. Because if I ask you to think of a hamburger right now, you have the ability to smell it. You have the ability to taste it.
Yeah, using the 5 senses, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So now there's a lot more research, right? Since first EMDR came out, and you have something like EMDR little r, EMDR big R, meaning, right, that we're talking about, events that are either, small events that are feeding others, or we're going to target, right, something that's like the feeder of everything else. And now what we figured out actually in research is that it's not so much the bilateral stimulation, so much as it is really targeting what we call dual attention, or really flooding, right, that event during the processing phase. So it doesn't just have to be with the eyes. It can be with butterfly hugs, right? So we would do this very, very fast with the client, of course, in preparation. They can even march in place. They can tap their feet. They can jump from left to right. We can use...
How open are they to doing this, Jeanette? Because I know that when you talk about EMDR to somebody, I'm sure there are clients that are skeptical about it.
Oh,
it's like,
absolutely.
What are you going to do? I mean, how is this tapping really going to help me out?
Yeah.
How is this marching going to really help me out, right?
Yes.
And then having to simplify everything
to
them is definitely...
And I think transparency is very important because I do let them know, that it's very difficult to let them know exactly what's going to happen because I don't read minds, right? I don't know what their brain is going to bring out. But a good place to start is always making sure that they have informed decision. So I do allow them to read. I ask, have them ask me questions. I'll ask them questions as well so that they understand the 8 phases of EMDR. If we're using a traditional form of EMDR, if we're using a more advanced form, then again, reviewing what that protocol would look like for them. And above all, right, making sure of their safety. And what I'm saying, when I say safety, right, it's making sure that they have the ability to self-soothe because, again, we don't know how powerful the brain is until we're there. I mean, the first time that I used EMDR, I'm talking to you way back in 2014.
Okay.
And I remember I was working in a hospital setting, and I did this with a female victim of military sexual trauma. And she sat across from me, and I remember that she stopped because she literally said, I feel like you're in front of me with a tub of popcorn, eating the popcorn, watching me getting abused. And that never leaves my mind because that's how vivid the experience was for her, right, as we were processing with EMDR.
How did you feel about that when she told you that statement?
I will lie. It was intimidating, right? Because I felt at that moment like, wow, did I do something wrong? Like, is this what's supposed to happen? I was questioning, right? However, there was a lot of relief in her. A lot of relief in being able to tell her story and being able to process her story that somebody at some point had minimized and almost ignored. So I knew that we weren't doing anything wrong, right? We were doing something actually really, really right. She did experience, in her own experience in that moment, physical symptoms where the body, right, actually remembered the physical pain of what it was to be, brutally attacked. And so it made me realize, right, it made me have more respect for this type of method. Because again, we don't know what the brain is going to bring out, and whether that's going to be in talk, it's going to be an image, it's going to be just a memory, or it's going to be an actual physical sensation of that event happening again. So I have to do, right, a really good job at really keeping that client safe during that experience so that we're not taking them out of what we call their window of tolerance.
So this happened back in 2014, you had mentioned. And how many sessions would you say were needed to be able to make an effective impact on her?
So with her, I would want to say that probably about maybe 6 sessions to truly create a really good impact with her. Back then, I mean, I was not trained, right, in advanced forms of EMDR. Right now, you take a collective group and you can use something called EMDR Assist for a recent traumatic event. So, for example, right, when we had the shooting here on August the 3rd, and they called all these providers into the community, that's what providers were using, EMDR Assist, because you can literally take a group of 200, 300 people and process right away what's happening, right? So that you really do preventative measure so that you're not getting into post-traumatic stress disorder. And you have those that are providing it, and then you have those that are, on the lookout to see who might be having more of a reaction. And then we'll take those people that have that reaction and then do one-on-one sessions with them instead of doing the collective as a group.
So let's go ahead and say that you have a collective group. How do you initiate that?
So there's a specific protocol for that. I mean, it's quite lengthy for me to explain it here, to be honest, right? but it is done through the use of the tapping. There's no way, right, that I can have you look into my eyes, right? Or let's look at your eyes with using my fingers. So they would use body language themselves, right? So you walk them through how can you actually do bilateral stimulation by using the butterfly hug technique. Sometimes, you also have them draw on a paper if they can't talk. You have them draw very specific things so that by the end of the experience, they would have reprocessed from where they started to where they want to actually be and then to where they're at.
Okay.
Yeah, so that can be really quickly because EMDR assist can be done between 2 to 3 sessions.
Okay. This is so important. Not just anybody can get trained for it, right? Or can you teach a client to do EMDR on themselves when you're not around?
So you don't teach a client to do EMDR. That would be really dangerous. What you do teach a client to do, right, is to do the self-soothing techniques. So they can use the calm, safe place on their own, right? And of course, you walk through with that process with them. You have them practice that process with them. When I'm in session, we always terminate a session with doing calm, safe place. Now, there are people that don't do really well with calm, safe place because they have a difficult time in actually using imagery because it does require imagery. So there's other ways, right? We would use breathing techniques. We might use a mindful meditation, a light stream technique where they imagine like a certain color that represents healing for them, right? Coming through the crown all the way down through their body and really filling their entire body with that.
Yeah.
And so when we do that, right, at a brain level, then they have the ability to actually self-soothe because, again, we're conditioning the mind to know I have the ability to actually calm myself down, bring myself down from that event because it's not happening right now, this minute, this moment.
That is cool. I know that the last time you were here, you had mentioned humming.
So that's not from EMDR. So that's more of the vagal term, right? So last time I had talked about the vagal nerve being tied into our body, right? It's the largest nerve in our entire body. And it goes from the left earlobe all the way down into your stomach. So it is the largest, right, connecting nerve in your body. And it happens to be, right, the connection between the gut and the brain. So what I had shared is that if somebody has a very challenging time with guilt or with shame, then they can actually massage right here from between the ear down coming into your clavicle, into the shoulder area and squeezing. So it's almost like I'm just squeezing. I'm not, hurting myself. I'm just squeezing as I talk about a traumatic event, especially anything tied with guilt or tied with shame, because this is where it sits. Another way of stimulating the vagal nerve is through humming. So, and creating, right, that vibration that's, again, going all the way down into my stomach. And my number one favorite is singing. Singing. I think a lot of times people say, like, just sing it out, just dance it out, but they don't tell you why.
Yeah, and that's one of the most important parts about being able to engage somebody in a technique, because people want to know the why too. Yeah. Right? I love to sing too. Singing is really cool because it's liberating. It makes you feel free, and it's unexplainable for those that have never done it before. But even if you don't think you have a really good voice, if you just get out there and just kind of sing a song or something, it just makes you feel good. Yes. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's the thing, right? Most of us can be really self-conscious. And we think like, oh my God, I don't have a voice. Like, I'm not going to sing. But you know what? You're in the comfort of your home. Maybe you're in the comfort of your car. So the next time that you're feeling down and you're feeling anxious, put on your favorite song and start singing. Nobody's going to know. The reality is that you're doing more than just exercising the vocal cord. Again, you're actually stimulating the vagal nerve that goes all the way down to your stomach. So what I want for people to understand is that when we stimulate that nerve, right? If you have food, you talked about, getting a burger earlier, right? And it's not the healthiest. So I need you to understand that if our mind is already not healthy, and then we put something that's not healthy, and then that vagal nerve, right, is like shocked, it's not moving, there's no stimulation, then now you have a recipe for disaster. But if you start to help, right, that vagal nerve to just have a little bit more vibration, now we can actually help, right? We aid serotonin, which lives inside of your stomach, to travel up into the brain to actually decrease those anxiety, the depressive symptoms that we're having. So it goes beyond, right, just singing. That's why you feel so good, because you're stimulating internally the vagal nerve that's allowing that calm response to come through inside of you. Laughter, right? There is such a thing as laughter yoga, believe it or not.
All right. How do you activate something like laughter yoga?
Laughing.
You have to have somebody to make you laugh, right? I would imagine. I don't know.
Well, believe it or not, you can actually even go on YouTube, type in laughter yoga, and you're going to have all these videos on laughter yoga. I'm not, a person that's certified in doing that, but I certainly have gone to workshops for it. And that's literally what it is.
So it's a component that's already added to yoga. For example, you're doing a pose.
No,
you're
it's
not
literally just laughing.
Wow.
So laughter yoga, and they call it laughter yoga, right? Because you're not doing poses. You're not, making yourself be so flexible. What you're flexing, right, is the muscle, the jaw, to actually create, again, that part in your brain that's stimulating calmness and the soothing response through laughter. Why? Because laughter creates movement. Laughter forces me to get out of whatever I'm thinking, right? Laughter forces me to unfreeze. Laughter forces me to no longer fight because I'm unclenching. So think about it. I'm releasing, right, all the block that I have right here.
All the tension.
And the tension that I have in my heart, right? So if I'm not now laughing, sometimes I'm like, ha, 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 right? So now I'm stimulating even the center, right, of my emotions. So
cool.
Think about the fact that your body, right, is fully connected. Nothing operates without something else being impacted. So laughter is truly healing. This is why if somebody's down, if somebody's anxious, they tell you, right, go watch a funny TikTok. Go watch YouTube video, right, that makes you laugh. Go put on a movie that's going to make you laugh, even if you think I want to cry. Maybe you will cry during a funny movie, but that goes into even what we call real reality, right? And I think it's REEL reality, which is also a form of cinema therapy. You can actually heal by watching movies. You just have to have, right, the right conditions to make that movie be therapeutic for you.
Okay. Can you give us an example, for example?
Sure.
Because I think this is really cool. Now, this is, you're talking to people that are like, okay, that's something I can do. I can sit down and I can watch a movie that's going to be therapeutic. What kind of movie would be therapeutic for somebody, right? Can you tell us about some movies that have worked for you?
Sure. So I think the first time that I ever really exposed myself, right, to using cinema therapy in the hospital setting, and we would use it with clients, with patients, was the movie Inside Out.
Yes, the cartoon.
The cartoon, right? Because it talks about all of the emotions.
It's hilarious.
Now, isn't it? Right? So in real reality, there's actually a worksheet that people can even go on Google and type in, and it will give you a worksheet with all of these different questions that you can ask yourself while you're actually watching the movie. So it might ask something like, which character evoked, the most intense feeling for you, and what was that feeling? And, what is it about this character that evoked this feeling in you? What's going on in your life right now that is touching, right, this particular area? And so you're meant to process, right? It's a form of processing what I'm feeling. Most of the times we have a bucket of popcorn, big, large soda or water, and you're over there crying or you're laughing, right? Or you're mad. You want to go through the movie theater. Yeah. I'm going to beat that person up for you. But you never ask yourself why. And the why is because it's touching something inside of you. It's creating a discomfort inside of you because it's touching some part of your story, some part of who you are as a person. So somebody, right, who's out there and says, like, I can't leave my home, I'm just going to sit here and watch movies all day. That's an opportunity to work with that person with where they're comfortable at, to get them out and start learning more about themselves. And
especially when they're skeptical about therapy too, right?
Yes, because there's so many ways of doing therapy that doesn't involve just talking. I mean, this is why even with children, right? I'm going to step into the child world for a second. You have play therapy. the essence of play therapy, especially for those that are 10 years of age and under, is that I don't bring the child into my world.
Mm-hmm.
I come into the child's world. So why does it only have to be with children, right? So I think that I would definitely say, right, to therapists, clinicians that are out there, you have to remember to not have this complex of like, I'm a savior and I know everything and I know better than you. No, you don't. You have schooling and you know tools, techniques to help someone, but no one is a cookie cutter.
Not
Every single person, right, walking through the door is very different. And one technique may not work for this person. That's not going to work for the other. I think one of the most important things that I always figure out with my clients is, what are your beliefs? What are your faith beliefs? Because maybe they really don't believe, right, in traditional therapy. And maybe they have faith, right? And so maybe they need to use scriptures in order to heal. So it's finding the comfort level of that person and helping them to know how to expand that to use it for their own healing.
That is so nice. That is really valuable information for sure. And it really opens up the door for people. It's sending out an invitation pretty much for those that are saying to themselves, well, I don't see therapy as being for me because I don't need it. I don't think it works.
Yes.
And that comes back to the whole, I don't want to say if it's a culture thing. Maybe it is, right?
It can be.
But some people are just not into it because they don't think it's going to be effective for them, or they're afraid. So I like that you're talking about this because it's inviting people to take a new outlook on what therapy is all about, especially during this month where we're just talking about it all the time. So anxiety, post-traumatic stress syndrome that you're talking about. I mean, all these methods that you have right now are basically something that I think people should really look into and say, okay, look, this is something that could definitely help me out. But what I'm noticing right now, Jeanette, also is that people just don't have the capacity right now, like professionals, right? Are you having a hard time with that right now?
You know, I will say that in our clinic, our biggest, idea, right, was surrounding or creating a clinic that would speak to having access to care. So I work, and I did say this last time, right, that I work for the Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic at Endeavors in San Antonio, Texas. So I'm a remote clinician. I used to be the director for the Stephen A. Cohen Military Clinic here in El Paso. And so we created these clinics to really remove the barriers to care. And when I say that, right, it was to the point where we would provide childcare for people, for their kids, so that they could, do their treatment without their child being present. We would Uber them to and from the appointment. They had anywhere from free to low cost services in our clinic, and they still do. So in our clinic, I wouldn't say that I see that as frequently as I do with other providers, right? Who in the community are like, I'm saturated. I have a waiting list. I can't anymore. I can't do this anymore. So yes, I do find, right, that a lot of times people are struggling to find a provider.
Yeah, and have you tried calling one of these numbers sometime?
Oh, absolutely.
Therapy. All of a sudden, press 1 if you need assistance right now. And if you don't need assistance right now and you think this is an emergency, go straight to the emergency room. Right. Things like that. And it's like, wait a second.
It's very off-putting.
Yeah, it is.
Very off-putting.
Big time. It's discouraging for a lot of people, I would imagine.
Yes. And I, as a provider, right, I think that for me, in the area that we work in right now is a short-term model of treatment, meaning that we only see clients from 8 sessions up to 12 sessions of treatment. We are able to extend them a little bit more, not too much more. And then we have to send them into long-term care if it's something that they feel that they need to still benefit from. And sometimes it happens. So as a provider, right, it's my duty to help you find who that long-term therapy is. It's not sufficient to just be like, oh, I'm going to give you 3 numbers, go out and call, see you, bye. And unfortunately, right, most of the time that is what happens.
Yeah.
So then they fall through the cracks. And then here they are, right, a month later, 2 months later, and that's okay. I'm glad that they're back and that they feel comfortable, right, to come back. But it's also that they're back because they couldn't find somebody to actually service them or that would give them the time of day. they call a provider and they're waiting weeks, days, right, to be called back because they never heard from anybody. That's frustrating. That's very discouraging to somebody who truthfully needs, right, treatment now.
Well, it's also very, it's causing some sort of a rubble in the water also when it comes to being able to reach out for help. It's like, I finally build up the courage to call a mental health provider. And then all of a sudden I'm getting this fiasco. I can't get a hold of anybody, right? Yeah. Or worse yet, they're canceling on you because, you know, they don't have enough people to cover the necessity, right?
Yes.
So I would imagine that it's extremely difficult for a lot of these agencies right now. So how do you find ways to kind of free up your time a little bit when you need to kind of disconnect also?
So for me, I mean, honestly, I have to be very zealous of my own time. I have to actually schedule time to eat.
Do you have a hard time with boundaries by chance?
You know, I think I used to have a worse time with boundaries than I do. I'm not perfect by all means. I will say that I am that provider that, you know, if there's a client that's like, Jeanette, I need to see you. And Jeanette has like a lunch break. I'm like, okay, I'll put you on my lunch and I'll eat lunch later. Probably not the healthiest, but you know what? I know my boundaries, right? When it comes to my physical health. So there has been times where I even tell the client, I'm like, you know what? Yes, I can see you. It's going to be during my lunch break. So if you don't mind that, you know, I'm going to have some snacks just to make sure that I don't pass out on you in your session, I would be glad to attend to you. And they're like, of course. Because you know what? I have to be honest with them.
Yeah.
I do have to be honest. And sometimes providers like, no, like that's not the client's problem. No, it's not that it's their problem, but I have to give them my humanness. And they have to understand, right, that I'm a human too, just like they are as well. And we both have different needs. And you're here to see me. And if that means I have to have even just a little bit of a snack in order to be present, right, then I'm going to be. Because if not, I'm going to be unfocused thinking, I'm like, oh, I'm really hungry. I can't wait for this person to stop talking. That's definitely not what you want to do, nor the energy you want to receive, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So for me, the outlet of dance, the outlet of, you know, modeling, the outlet of talking to other peers, right, as well. Clinical supervision, I think, is super important. Whether you are a very seasoned clinician that has been years in therapy or you're that student intern that's barely coming in. So for me, clinical supervision is essential, right? And in our clinic, we actually have clinical supervision every single week on Wednesdays.
Oh, that is nice.
So we are able to talk to other providers, right? We laugh, we joke, not about our clients, but just, you know, the everyday things that are happening. And I don't know everything. Sometimes I may feel stuck with a client and I need the input from my team to be like, hey, Jeanette, like you missed the mark on this one, or like, hey, have you tried this? And I can't possibly know everything. So what I would have to say, right, is having the willingness to be a sponge and absorb other ideas that maybe I haven't thought about has been really important.
But you're definitely in the right field.
Oh,
I could see it.
Yes, I love
see it
what
in
I
the
do.
way you
I
talk.
do.
I could see it in the way you express yourself. I could see the fact that you're genuinely in the right place. You could actually wake up and say, I'm fulfilling my life goals with my profession. I'm in love with my profession.
I am.
This is something that I truly enjoy doing. But one of the things that I have seen a lot, unfortunately, is a lot of people that are in our field that don't particularly enjoy being therapists. Sometimes I could see it in the way they talk to people, or sometimes I could see it in the environment that they create, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or sometimes plain and simple, they just get that compassion fatigue, right? And I think it's important to identify those things because unfortunately, you know, there's a lot of people like teachers, for example. Let's go into teachers, right? You have teachers that have the most important job, I think, right? Yeah. They're educating our children, right? But unfortunately, there's a lot of teachers that sometimes burn out, and when they burn out, they don't take the time to really do what they're meant to do, right?
To teach.
To teach.
Yeah.
So how do you work with as a supervisor, licensed professional LPCS?
Yes.
How do you talk to your students about this?
So it's super important for us to have transparency, right? For us to have vulnerability as well. To say, like, you know what? let's really step back, right? And let's observe, are we seeing you being stressed or are you stressed out? Because if we're stressed out, we're just a little dip away, right, from burnout.
Mm-hmm.
So people think that burnout is like, I'm wasted, I have no more in me. But really, burnout comes from this idea, right? This feeling of I'm failing.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I can't be present 100%, I'm going to feel like I'm failing at whatever it is that I'm doing. And I've lacked joy. And if you lack joy, everything goes.
Mm-hmm.
Joy is super, super important. So when I have a student, right, the first thing that I always want to ask them is, what do you look like in your natural state when you're not stressed? Because if I start with, how do you look like when you're stressed? They're going to be like,
what do you mean?
I don't know, right? What do you mean? Yeah, exactly. But it's an open door because I want to know, right? What are we both going to look for? Because you may not realize it, but I may realize it before you do.
Mm-hmm.
And the opposite, right? I want feedback because maybe they're going to notice, like, Jeanette, you're stressed. Like, you're talking to me, in a more snappy way,
Mm-hmm.
or you're being short, right? Or you're not really giving me feedback, or whatever it is that is going on.
You've gotten that before?
Yes. And not just, from my students, but from my staff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that as leaders, we have to have the vulnerability to receive feedback, constructive feedback, right? Because, and I don't use the word criticism. I try very much to stay away from that, because if I'm going to critique you, right, sometimes it has a negative connotation, versus if I have feedback, then I'm inviting you to talk and tell me. I may have not always been the best, right, at receiving feedback. I definitely have gotten better, because now that I understand, right, the concept of feedback, it's not a personal attack. It's rather an awareness to be like, hey, what's really going on?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not, again, the person that knows everything. So if I am that person that's seeing myself, more irritated, definitely being more snappy, not as focused,
but people
losing
expect
concentration.
that
Of
from
course.
You.
Yes.
People look at Jeanette and say, she's got all the answers, right?
Yeah.
Or sometimes when you're having a bad day, or maybe you didn't say hi to somebody, not because you didn't want to, but because you weren't focused, maybe, I don't know, you were thinking of other things. Right away, I thought she was a therapist. Shouldn't she always be in a good mood? Shouldn't she always be self-regulated? That's a misconception a lot of people have, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I have to say, right, therapists are not superheroes where we don't have bad days.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've seen, superhero movies lately, Marvel movies, right, you see that they have really bad days, as a matter of fact. So it's that I'm human. So I have clients sometimes, right, that will say like, hey, how do you deal with it? Like, what would you do in my situation? And I'm not anybody to tell them, right, what I would do in my situation.
That's a tough question.
It is a tough question. It is a very tough question, right? Because the first thing they tell you in therapy when you're going to school is do not, right, reveal, don't self-disclose. But I'm going to tell you that there are times where it is a benefit. And I have to measure, right, whether there's going to be a risk or there's going to be a benefit in self-disclosing something that
they're sizing you up too.
Absolutely, right? So I have to establish and create a healthy boundary with them, and then remind them, like, why are you here? And sometimes I have to do the same thing with my student interns too, because they size me up, right? And I tell them, like, I need you to understand that I'm human too, and that if I'm not being perfect or I'm being less than what you expected, talk to me. Don't hide it, right? Don't go run off and tell my supervisor. Tell me, because I'm a human too. And then if we both can't come to an agreement, then that's where we both need to maybe bring in a third party, right? And actually help us to see something that we're not seeing. But I believe that there needs to be flexibility and vulnerability to actually allow a person, right, to express what's really going on.
Yeah.
And you cannot do that if you don't feel safe.
Yeah. You have to establish that rapport for sure.
Yeah.
Now, you've talked about a lot of cool things, Jeanette, and this interview has gone by so quickly, right? One question that I'm dying to ask you is, who's your inspiration when it comes to your profession? Who inspires you in your field? Who would you say is somebody who, I'm not going to say mainstream, right? But somebody who was well known that I like her style or his style. I like how they give education, because I've seen you in action. I've seen you in action, not in private practice, but I've seen you doing your presentations, and I think your presentations are so cool for anyone who's watching right now. It's going to be really cool that they see you perform because it's actually a performance. You're there. Every bullet point that's on that PowerPoint presentation, it's just a guide. That's all it is. You just run with every single thing that's up there. As a matter of fact, some of my coworkers, when we went to go see your presentation, they were in awe. And they had so much material to work with that when they were asked to do a presentation, when we got back to the facilities, they just explained everything with ease because they just had much knowledge. So much knowledge that you provided them. So yeah, that is really cool. I thank you for that. So who is the person that you look up to?
I'm going to be very frank and open with you. You know, I don't have necessarily like a mainstream person, but I'm going to tell you that I was very blessed. And yes, I'm going to use that word. Very blessed, very fortunate that when I started as a student intern, the mentor that I had inside of El Paso Behavioral Health System, which is one of our local mental health hospitals, her name is Cherry Pineda, and Cherry's still out there. She's actually, I think, a clinician in Emergence Health Network right now in one of their clinics. I saw the way that she treated her clients. I saw the way that she treated me. There was nothing that I couldn't go to her with, that she would have such a way of being so genuine with her clients, with me as her student, taking me under her wing. I saw the way that she presented. I saw the way that she was so inviting that I said, that's how I want to be. You know, I had other mentors as well. I mean, I had Miss Ceci Burgos, who has her own private practice here on the West Side. My God. I mean, that lady, love her to pieces because that's who definitely shaped me, right? As an LPC and now an LPC supervisor. I know that I follow, you know, a lot of her guidance right now in life. And as an LPC, a professional, I had Melissa Kimberlin, who also, you know, is in one of our local hospitals right now. I mean, I had Scott Pelking. I mean, I could keep going on because honestly, I don't know that I've ever thought of like, who's the one person? But if I had to say where that one person started, it would have to be with Sherry. It would have had to be with Sherry. So I didn't necessarily say like, I'm going to go after Dr., you know, Judith Beck, or I'm going to go after Aaron Beck. No, it wasn't somebody like mainstream, right? It was more of like, what created that idea of genuineness? Because there is a difference, right, between your evidence-based practice, like that theoretical model that you want to follow, versus who do you actually want to be as a therapist? And I had such cool people in my corner that allowed me to bring in the genuineness of who I am and still respect, right, the theoretical background that I was. I was that person. I was like, I'm always going to be CBT, only CBT. And I came to figure out that there's so much out there that is not just CBT.
Well, today you definitely debunked that. You talked about, I don't know how many methods that helped us out, right?
Absolutely.
Which is so totally awesome.
Yes.
We thank you for that. And as you could see, time is already close to being.
Yes.
Yeah, but we always have a blast when having you here, and we hope that you continue. We can make this a regular thing. Right?
Absolutely.
Because you have so much wealth to share with people, and I think El Paso definitely has a gold nugget with you for sure.
Thank you.
And how do people get a hold of you if they do need to get a hold of you?
Sure, absolutely. So last time I had mentioned that I do have a small private practice where I do see clients on the weekends. So they can definitely go into even my Facebook if they needed to. I am there as J83 James. Then my full name is Jeanette James. So Jeanette. My last name is James, James. And they can actually email me directly as well to J83James@Yahoo. Or I am on Grow Therapy, GROW Therapy. If you type in my name, you can find me there. Psychology Today as well.
Psychology Today. I saw your bio there. Really cool.
So I have my bio there, and it has my direct link for people to book an appointment if what you're looking for is therapy. If you have questions, you know, there's something that I can help to answer. Or if you just simply, you know, want or are interested in, you know, having some question that maybe you've been dying for somebody to answer, please, you know, feel free to reach out and let me know. Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Now, I always have to ask, and I ask every single person that comes, is there something that you would like to add before we wrap this up?
Sure. You know, I think that the one thing that I want to add for today, because I mean, this was a very different interview, right, than the last one that we had, is that from everything that I've said to you today, I would really hope that what you would take from today is that I'm inviting you, it's an open invitation to really get out there, explore what's going to help you heal, what's going to help you become your most authentic, true self, so that you live in your truth. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to, believe that there's only one way of doing things. And if you've gone out there and you've been told by a professional or you've been told by people that there's no way that you're going to heal, I'm going to debunk that today, because there is. And I seldomly use, right, an always or a never, because that's a big no-no in CBT. But I'm going to say that right now, today.
I'm so happy that you're saying that.
Yes, this minute, right? I want you to hear what I'm saying, that there's someone out there for you that does have the answer to your ailments, whether that be physical, whether that be mental, whether that be spiritual, or whether that be emotional, which are those 4 areas, right, of aligning. And that's what my business name is, Aligned Empowerment, because I firmly believe that every single one of us has the capacity to be aligned and speak our truth, to walk in our truth, so that you can achieve the level of joy and the level of happiness that you're seeking.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Jeanette James. And thank you guys for watching another episode of the LHP Love, Health, Prosperity podcast. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.